This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to Asean in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam. I'm Alma Angeles. Hello, Ralph.
Good afternoon, Alma, and to all of our televiewers. I'm Ralph Pandel-Tempay from your EBC Vietnam Bureau to give you the latest updates in ASEAN's dynamic region.
On today's headlines.
Alam mo, kababayan, importante talaga yun.
President Duterte orders police to detain and investigate people not wearing face masks and those not wearing them properly in public.
Crew members of the MV Athens Bridge, a container ship with several Filipino personnel infected with the coronavirus disease 2019, have been given medical aid upon arriving at the port of Manila.
About 200 non-governmental organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, called on the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo on the military junta in Myanmar.
A high-tech Singapore laboratory is replicating popular Asian dishes with plant-based meat alternatives to feed the region's growing appetite for sustainable food.
First, here in the country, President Duterte ordered police to detain and investigate people not wearing face masks and those not wearing them properly in public. They will be detained for up to 9 hours in police stations. The president made the order as he noticed that some Filipinos are merely wearing a face mask just for compliance. Again, let's listen in.
Alam mo, kababayan, importante talaga yung COVID kasi marami na rin namamatay, marami pa sa ospital. Sabi ng mga experts, ako hindi man, na bumaba na raw yung infection tapos pero ang mga ospital puno pa rin. Kaya kung talagang may utak ka, if you are a thinking human person, sundin mo, kung nag-iisip ka, may isip ka pa, sundin mo yung utos ng gobyerno, kaya hindi yan akin, hindi amin, para yan sa interest ng bayan. Na hindi ka makahawa, hindi ka mahawa, hindi ka mag-uwi, hindi mahawaan ng iba. Yan ang, saka yung washing, pati mask. Na itong mask, yung iba, for compliance lang, naglalagay ng mask pero nakalabas yung ilong. My orders to the police are, those who are not wearing their mask properly in order to protect the public. Kasi kung hindi mo ma-depinsahan yung publiko, to arrest them and detain them, investigate them why they are doing it. You have 9 hours. I-detain mo, tapos imbestigahin mo siya kung bakit ganun ang behavior nila. Pagka hindi ko ganunin, hindi ko higpitan, walang mangyayari. Yan nga, yung for compliance lang kayo. Pagka ganon, tapos ako dito hirap na hirap, papawala na yung pera natin sa bangko, tapos sige pa rin kayo galaw ng galaw dyan na hindi tama. Ayan, luhin mo. Imbestigahin mo. 9 hours. Stay in the station.
Meanwhile, the Philippine National Police said it will continue implementing existing laws and regulations on minimum public health standards amid the pandemic. Outgoing PNP Chief General de Bolsina said this includes the observance of basic health protocols that require the proper use of face mask, face shield, and physical distancing in public places, and specific provisions of the Republic Act number 11332, or the mandatory reporting of notifiable diseases and health events of Public Health Concern Act.
As the government regulators prepare to conduct clinical trials for the use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19, the Bureau of Customs intercepted 20,000 undeclared capsules of ivermectin and others regulated drugs at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport in Pasay City. In a statement on Thursday, the BOC Port of NAIA said the drug shipment with an estimated value of 1.30 million pesos was apprehended at a pair cargo warehouse on May 4. The shipment imported by Finsad Incorporation from New Delhi, India, was declared as food supplements, multivitamins, and multimineral capsules. The BOC said the undeclared drugs were discovered after the shipment was subjected to 100% physical examination. Jesusa Joy Sirunay, Director of Center for Drug Regulation and Research of the Food and Drug Administration, said ivermectin is still under compassionate use in specialized institutions authorized by FDA through the issuance of compassionate special permit.
And staying in the country, the Department of Health has allocated 22 million pesos for the clinical trials of the anti-parasitic drug ivermectin to determine its efficacy for treatment of COVID-19 patients. The President ordered the Department of Science and Technology to do study and to determine the efficacy, safety, and effect of ivermectin for COVID-19. During the public address of President Duterte on Wednesday evening, Science and Technology Secretary Fortunato de la Peña disclosed the 8-month study will start next month. De la Peña said the period may be shortened if more people will volunteer for the study. Aside from ivermectin, the DOST also conducted clinical trials for the use of herbal plants, tawa-tawa and lagundi, virgin coconut oil, melatonin, and convalescent plasma for COVID treatment.
The Philippines has given its emergency use authorization to the Moderna vaccine. FDA Director General Rolando Enrique Domingo said that the vaccine will be given to all adults aged 18 and above. Domingo noted that the vaccine's efficacy rate is consistently above 80% in all age groups above 18 years old, including special groups like the health workers, individuals with comorbidities, and the elderly. The vaccine, which has also been given emergency use listing by the World Health Organization, has a 94.1% efficacy rate based on its clinical trials held in the U.S.
The FDA has granted emergency use authorization to Swedish Pharma Corporation for the COVID-19 mRNA COVID-19 vaccine Moderna. Manufactured po ito by Moderna Biotech. It is declared that all conditions for an EUA are present and that the benefit of the vaccine, of using the vaccine, outweighs the known and potential risks. Yung pong interim data o yung pong data na makikita natin sa kanilang mga clinical trial na na-publish na, show na the vaccine has an overall efficacy rate of over 94% in preventing COVID-19. And the efficacy rate is consistently above 80% among all age groups 18 years old older. Kasi tinignan din nila ito. So sa pangkalahatan, 94% ang kanyang efficacy rate, pero tinignan din na sa mga special group katulad ng mga elderly, ng mga may comorbidities, may ibang sakit, at saka doon sa mga pasyente na mga health workers, at sa lahat naman ng grupo, ang kanyang efficacy rate is consistently above 80%. So ito po ay aprobado sa mga tao na 18 years old and above.
Meanwhile, in Vietnam, the government has extended the quarantine period for anyone arriving in the country to 3 weeks. authorities said on Wednesday, following a fresh community outbreak of the coronavirus. The nation has so far kept case numbers low, recording just over 3,000 reporting just over 3,000 deaths, 3,000 cases and 35 deaths, thanks to strict quarantine and extensive contact tracing. But Vietnam reported its first community outbreak in weeks last Thursday. Other clusters have since emerged. Several cases have been linked to people who tested positive after their 2-week stay in hotel quarantine had ended. The new quarantine period will be 21 days. The announcement came after one of the country's best hospitals, which has treated many COVID-19 patients, went into lockdown Wednesday after a doctor tested positive for the virus. 14 others at the National Hospital for Tropical Diseases in Hanoi were later found to be infected. About 800 medical workers, patients, as well as any relatives who were visiting at the time the lockdown was announced must remain in the hospital for 2 weeks. Vietnam has also detected cases in the community of a COVID-19 variant believed to be behind a devastating surge in infections in India.
From Vietnam, we go now to Malaysia, where the country tightened coronavirus curbs in the capital to combat a fresh spike in cases. Only essential businesses are allowed to operate and restaurant dining in banned. The partial lockdown in Kuala Lumpur, initially set to last from May 7 to 20, comes a day after officials announced tougher restrictions in several districts surrounding the city. Announcing the new curbs in Kuala Lumpur, Defense Minister Ismail Sabri Yaacob said at least 17 new infection clusters were detected in the city last month. Only certain types of businesses, such as supermarkets, petrol stations, and medical clinics, will be allowed to operate while the restrictions are in force. Eateries can remain open, but only for takeaways. Most people have already been working from home for months. Malaysia's outbreak remains less severe than in many other countries, with officials reporting over 400,000 cases and almost 1,600 deaths.
Malaysia has decided to temporarily suspend all sports and recreational activities in areas placed under the Movement Control Order, or MCO. The Ministry of Health said the decision was made based on the risk assessment and current development for the sake of public health and in line with the government's desire to curb the spread of COVID-19. However, the Bernama reports that these sports and recreational premises or facilities can still carry out certain operations, limited to management and maintenance only. Quarantine-based centralized training programs by the National Sports Council and camp-based training by state sports councils. The Standard Operating Procedures, or SOPs, for the sports and recreational sectors in areas placed under the conditional MCO and recovery MCO remain the same.
The crew members of the MV Athens Bridge, a container ship with several Filipino personnel infected with the coronavirus, have been given medical aid upon arriving at the port of Manila. In a Facebook post on Friday, the Department of Transportation said the maritime sector has aided the vessel's crew of 21 Filipinos, 12 of whom tested positive for COVID-19. Now, 2 members who are in critical condition have been brought to a medical facility, while the rest of the crew are now quarantined in vessel and provided with medical supplies such as oxygen tanks. The Philippine Coast Guard has also provided security to ensure that no unauthorized vessels or bangkas would approach the MV Athens Bridge. MV Athens Bridge was reported to have departed from India on April 22 and arrived in Haiphong, Vietnam on May 1, where the crew was administered reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction or RT-PCR tests. Now on Thursday, the PCG received a request from the ship's captain for the medical evacuation of its 2 crew members who required urgent medical care. And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Ralph and I will be back right after this short break.
This portion is brought to you by Security Bank.
Can't believe you captured my heart. You must have been thinking why I don't know either.
What's up guys? Ako nga pala si Corey. Abangan niyo ako bilang guest performer sa Letters and Music ngayong darating na Sabado, May 8, 1 to 2 p.m. Syempre dito lang sa Net25. See you!
Nanaginip, mapapaisip at magiging ka.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Welcome back to the program. Students and parents marched in Manawa, a city in Myanmar's Sagaing region, as they protest against the military junta's plans to reopen schools across the country. With schools expected to reopen on June 1, demonstrators are vowing to boycott educational institutions under the military regime. Meanwhile, around 100 protesters gather in downtown Yangon to march quickly through the streets before dispersing. Many were carrying flags of ethnic armed groups that have rejected the coup. The country has been in turmoil since the military deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi, triggering a mass uprising of daily protests and a nationwide boycott from civil servants. So far, nearly 770 people have been killed in deadly crackdowns, according to a local monitoring group, though the junta has a far lower death toll, which it blames on rioters.
And staying in the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, about 200 non-governmental organizations, including the Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, called on the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo on the military junta in Myanmar. The call comes despite opposition from China, the junta's main backer, and Russia, which both hold veto-wielding power on the council, to any sanctions amid the months-long crisis in the former Burma. Since the junta took power, ousting the civilian government of Aung San Suu Kyi, several groups have called in vain for an arms embargo. On Monday, China's envoy to the UN, Zhang Jun, again told reporters that diplomacy was the way forward and that efforts by regional grouping ASEAN, to which Myanmar belongs, to find a solution should be supported. In a separate statement, Human Rights Watch's Louis Charbonneau said that the fact that the Council has not even debated an embargo is an appalling abdication of its responsibilities toward the people of Myanmar.
Nearly 200 Myanmar military troops, including a colonel and a lieutenant colonel, were killed in clashes between the regime's troops and the military wing of the Karen National Union, or KNU, in Karen State, according to government website Arawadi. The unceasing violence against protesters has drawn the ire of some of Myanmar's myriad ethnic armies, many of which have been battling the military for decades in border regions. Several have condemned the military
Now, several have condemned the military and come out in support of the anti-junta movement, offering shelter to fleeing activists in the territory they control. Clashes between the military and the Karen National Union, one of the leading, escalated since the coup. The KNU have seized and razed military posts, and the junta has responded with repeated airstrikes in the rebels' Karen State heartland. Now, earlier, we were able to talk to the Philippine ambassador to Myanmar, Ambassador Eduardo Red Kapunan Jr., to talk about the situation there and our Filipino community. Take a look.
So, in essence, the medical services here, hindi masyadong kumikilos. Well, may kumikilos naman. Pero the reports that I'm giving about COVID infection, I believe is not near to accurate. It's not accurate altogether. During the past months when rallies were so big, na magkarami talaga hundreds of thousands in the rallies.
Yes, sir.
Walang social distancing. Ang mask minsan nawawala na. And there was no report whatsoever about COVID results on these occasions. Samantalang naniniwala kami na dapat nag-spike up ang COVID dito, which is not reported. But of course, with that in mind, we still encourage the Filipinos not to go out, not to really observe the health protocols set by our government, by the Philippine government, para hindi na tayo magkaroon ng problema. So far, iisa lang yata ang Pilipino nagkaroon ng COVID dito. And it was not a fatal one. And after that, wala na. So that's as far as COVID is concerned dito sa Myanmar.
Sir, you mentioned about the Filipino community there. Can you update us on the situation of our Filipinos there? I don't know. Are they in any way affected?
Well, everybody's affected. The effect of COVID and the effect of this political upheaval here affects everybody. It doesn't distinguish kung ano nationalidad mo. It affects everybody. As far as Filipinos are concerned, we started out with about 1,200 to 1,300 Filipinos in Myanmar, working in Myanmar. Our recent survey, after several repatriation flights, we have about 600 plus remaining Filipinos here. Yun na lang ang pinoproblema namin. But these Filipinos are all willing to go home kung sabihan sila ng gobyerno natin na umuwi na kayo. Forced repatriation ito nga. Pero so far as of now, wala pang ganon. They are being repatriated on their own volition. So, ang ano lang nila is, because we're on level 4, alert level 4, if they go home to Manila, they are reported to the Department of Labor and they will not be allowed to come back to Myanmar until the alert level is dropped. We are at alert level 3 pala ngayon. Ang pinakamataas natin is alert level 4. Sa alert level 4, hinihintay din ito ng mga Pilipino because ang kanilang mga employers, sabi sa kanila, kung mag-alert level 4 kayo, we will cooperate with the government of the Philippines. So, bibigyan sila ng clearance to leave their companies na hindi naman sila awol na they can be taken back in when things go right. Ganun ang hinihintay nila is yung alert level that will be spelled out by the Department of Foreign Affairs.
If, for example, the Filipinos there, are they? Does the embassy have a system in place for them to immediately be protected in a safe zone in case they encounter these rallies or?
We have a contingency plan in place.
Protests, rather, yes.
we have an organizational setup that would supervise Filipinos sa mga townships. Kung balik mo sa mga distrito sila doon, we designate mga volunteer leaders na ina-account sila palagi. And all of those updated reports are passed on to the embassy for our records. Ngayon, should there be any emergency, hindi ko na lang mabanggitin yung detalye ng aming contingency plan. May pupuntahan sila kung saan namin sila kukolektahin. And then, dadalhin namin sila sa isang designated hotel where they will be booked. And doon sila maghihintay ng repatriation flight. All of this will be paid for by the Philippine government. Iingit nga yung ibang mga nationalities like mga British. Sabi nila bakit sa Pilipinas ginagastusan ng gobyerno ang evacuation ng mga nationalities sa kanila daw, kanya na sila evacuate. So, ang sagot ko doon kasi ang Philippine government places premium on our OFW as we claim them to be our new heroes, di ba? So we treat them as our new heroes. Ano po ang policy ng gobyerno natin sa DOJ. Ang pinaka-importante i-monitor sa Myanmar is the economic downturn. Kasi ito magiging dahilan kung bakit gutumin ng mga tao. At ang kasabihan nga is, a hungry people is an angry people. So it can exacerbate the situation. The latest report we received from the UNDP, 48% of the people of Myanmar has already crossed the poverty line, below the poverty line. And it will continue to do so because of the economic impact. Yung mga sanctions ng US and EU sa mga businesses dito, lalo na yung mga businesses that are linked to the military establishment. So, ang mga development projects sa ibang bansa like Australia, Japan, and other countries, halos tinigil na. So, may mga Filipino engineers who are working with Japanese companies na nag-build the bridges, the railways. They started to go back to the Philippines. Wala na silang trabaho rito eh. So, all of this, and isa pang indicator is the exchange rate between dollars and the Myanmar kyat. Mataas na ang dollars masyado. In other words, there is a lot of demand for dollars and no demand for the kyats, the local currency. Siguro inisip mga tao, kung magkagulo, mabuti na yung dollars ay nasa bulsa ko kaysa yung local kyats. Na maribol, lumipat mo sila ng ibang bansa, walang value. And then second thing, nagkakaroon ng banking problem dito sa Myanmar. Withdrawals from accounts may limit. Kaya makikita mo, every morning na ginawa ng Diyos, ang pila sa mga ATM, napakahaba, kilometro ng pila, only to withdraw a specific amount, or let's say $300, o gano'n. Higher than that, hindi ka bibigyan. Of course, after a 1 mile line, empty na rin yung ATM. So, hintay ka na naman the next day. So, your pila is never ending. Now, sa situation like ito, baka magkaroon ng cash run ang mga bangko. More money is going out, less money is being deposited. Di ba? So, ano man negosyo pasukan ng bangko kung bank run sila? Then they have this another limit. If you open an account after May 3, yung account na yun hindi na subjected to the cap. Pwede ka namang withdraw na kahit anong karami. But then, of course, kung gusto mo yun, mag-deposit ka ng malaki. So what is this? Anong itsura nito? They are now attempting to gather all the cash again. And ang kanilang bukang bibig dito is, kung open your account after May 3, you can withdraw it anytime in bigger amounts. So, it to me indicates a problematic situation sa banking system nila. And you know, when the banking system collapses, it's practically the whole economy collapsing. Diba? So, kung anong nakikita natin ngayon, hindi pa ito yung talagang tunay na mangyayari dito. We're looking at in 2-3 months, it will continue to dive down. And of course, pagka-ekonomiya na pag-usapan, medyo malaking problema na yan. It is more difficult to recover from an economic collapse than from any social evils that are happening now. Nag-contribute na dito ang COVID, nag-contribute na rin dito ang political upheaval. Doing its best to come up with a solution na win-win both ASEAN and Myanmar. And sa akin, I'm trying to put big hope na somehow maka-open yan ang dealings ng ASEAN and Myanmar, maka-open ang pintuan for a dialogue, no matter how small the opening is. Para bang hindi ba natin mabuksan fully ang pintuan, at least mabuksan mo ng konti, magkasilipad malakay both sides. Siguro that will be a good start. Pero kung sarada yung pintuan ngayon, walang ibang puntahan niya kundi magbasagan ng pintuan.
Yes.
So it's really not going to happen. It's really not going to happen. And that activity by itself might violate the very principle of ASEAN of non-interference in internal affairs. Let's just hope and pray that things turn out well and that hindi ang embassy magkaroon ng problema. Total, ang in-anticipate natin magiging problema ng mga 600 Filipinos dito, tingin ko manageable na. Isa sa yung dating numero. Manageable na ito ng 600 lang na iwang Pilipino dito. And itong 600 na naiwan dito, very close ang communication namin. Very close ang contact.
Ambassador Red, thank you very much po. And as the world focus its increasing concern in Myanmar, we continue to hope and pray that you will address the needs of our Filipinos there. Thank you very much for taking care of them po. Maraming salamat, Ambassador.
Maraming salamat din po. Thank you so much.
Stay in focus. We'll be right back after a short break.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Ito po si Lara Maige. Abangan niyo ako ngayong linggo sa Himig ng Lahi alas 8 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Welcome back to the program. The Philippines remains at 95th place out of 195 countries included in the 2020 World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report, according to Director General of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, Attorney Jeremiah Belgica. Director Belgica also assured that they are implementing President Rodrigo Duterte's reforms to further expedite transactions and services from the government as part of their sworn mandate.
Okay, Okay, so sa atin pong, ang Anti-Red Tape Authority po ay nagtatrabaho para mas maging efficient po at ma-expedite po ang mga government transaction. Nakita po natin ang napakadami pong mga progreso dahil po sa mga doing business indicators na atin hong inaayos ay nagkakaroon ho ng magandang mga resulta. Nung nakaraang taon po ay ang ating hong bansa ay nagkaroon ho ng 62.8 na score at nagkaroon ho tayong 95th placing o ranking po sa ating World Bank Doing Business Report ng 2020. Ito po isang malaking talon from previous 24th place to 95. Ibig sabihin 29 notches 4 places ang ating hong itinaas. Sa pamagitan po na to, maaari ho nating makita na ang pagtugon po ng mandato ng ating Pangulo sa napabilisin at mas mataasin po ang ranking at ang score po ng ating pong bayan sa global market. Nakikita rin po natin mga positive results as we exert efforts and work together sa ating pong mga importante at key agencies. However, marami pa rin mga kinakailangan at pagkailangan pagtulungan sa nalalapit pong mga araw. Next slide please. Ito nga pong nakaraang taon dahil sa ilan hong hindi lamang sa pandemya ay nagkaroon ho ng delay sa 2021 World Bank Doing Business Report dahil nagkaroon ho ng iba't ibang mga data irregularities sa iba pong mga bansa. Hindi ho Pilipinas ito pero ito po sa ibang mga bansa. Kaya minarapat ho ng World Bank na bisitahin po muli ang kanilang pong proseso at tingnan ho ng sigurado ho na maging mas accurate ang reflection po ng mga surveys nila. Next slide po. Isa ho sa mga challenges na atin pong kinakaharap ay yun nga ho nabanggit ho natin ang atin pong mas kinakailangan sigurong paigtingin ang mga proseso po nila sa World Bank na para makapture ang mga reforms na ginagawa ho ng mga bansa katulad ho ng Pilipinas. Next slide po. No? Meron ho ilang mga concerns at issues na ibinahagi din po ang tayo sa atin sa World Bank Group, the survey team, and that there are some inconsistencies doon ho sa mga resulta ng mga customer satisfaction na survey, doon din po sa mga agencies at yung assessment po nung sa atin pong mga doing business respondents. As to the counting of processing of days, there needs to be a clear distinction between the preparation time and the applicant and the processing time of the agencies. Kung minsan ho kasi binibilang po ang pagtagal na kung nasaan ho nandoon ho sa nag-apply, no? At hindi ho nila kinukumpleto ang kanilang mga requirements. So that also has to be clarified. Next slide po. Para ho ma-fix din po ang issues ng inconsistencies with the results ng mga agency satisfaction or customer satisfaction survey, ang aming pong recommendation ay mas i-filter po mabuti ng survey team ng pinapadala po ng World Bank para mas ang makuha ho talaga ay yung mga respondents na tunay pong naka-experience ng mga reforma na ginagawa po natin sa ating pong mga iba't ibang mga ahensya.
Meanwhile, Asian markets rallied today following a record-breaking finish on Wall Street as traders keenly await a key U.S. jobs report that's expected to reaffirm the recovery in the world's top economy is blasting ahead. And in a further sign that the global reflation trade is on track, iron ore prices hit an all-time high while copper, a yardstick of economic health, is just short of its own peak as demand surges for commodities, particularly from China. The U.S. jobs figures due later today are a major economic indicator and come a day after a forecast-beating reading on unemployment benefits that showed claims fell to their lowest since the coronavirus struck last year and put most of the plan planet into lockdown. Now, on Wednesday, payroll services firm ADP said private firms added 742,000 new jobs in April, well up from the previous month's 565,000. The positive readings helped propel the Dow to a new record on Wall Street, while the S&P 500 also rose and the Nasdaq ended a 4-day retreat. And Asia followed suit with Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Sydney, Seoul, Singapore, Taipei, and Manila all up, though Wellington and Jakarta edged down.
Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said the program for the acquisition of multi-role fighter aircraft remains on track as these aircraft are urgently needed in defending the country's airspace. In his speech during the Sanay Datu Air Defense exercise held in Basa Air Base, Florida Blanca, Pampanga on Thursday, he said, and I quote, "We are pushing for the acquisition of multi-role fighter aircraft as it is critical capability for the defense of our country's territorial airspace from any form of threat and enforcement of the Philippine Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The DND is looking to acquire at least 12 MRF units to beef up the Philippine Air Force air defense capabilities." Secretary Lorenzana took a selfie while aboard on FA-50PH firefighter aircraft. On his Facebook post, he said, "I witnessed and experienced firsthand the readiness and dedication of the Philippine Air Force to defend our airspace with the platforms they have."
And the Philippine Coast Guard said it is set to hold the second leg of its maritime exercise in the West Philippine Sea next week. Now, in a Facebook post, the PCG said 7 out of the 8 vessels that joined the previous maritime exercises remain on guard in the West Philippine Sea. It said BRP Gabriela Silang returned to Manila on Monday to get ready for the planned second leg of the joint PCG and BFAR maritime exercise. From April 23 to May 2, 8 PCG and BFAR vessels conducted a joint maritime exercise at the Bajo de Masinloc and the Kalayaan Group of Islands in the West Philippine Sea. Meanwhile, BRP Gabriela Silang, BRP Cabra, BRP Malapascua, and other PCG manned BFAR vessels also worked on holding a man overboard exercise, small boat operation, seamanship, and a fire drill. And we'll be back with more news right after this break.
The only solution that allows the Philippines to fully open the economy is vaccinating the employed sector. Lumagpas na nga sa mahigit 1 milyon ang kaso ng COVID-19 sa bansa. We are at war with an invisible enemy and the only weapon to win the war is the vaccine. Subalit nakakapagtaka na marami ding mga Pilipino ang ayaw mabakunahan sa gitna ng giyera sa pandemya. These and the views of the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion will shed light on the problems surrounding vaccination and why he believes that vaccination will expedite the country's return to economic recovery.
We have to look at this pandemic equal to war. No? It's the war that we are not using artilleries and bombs and all of that. What's happening here is that the infection is from something that you don't see. How do you eradicate the infection? You kill the virus by taking the vaccine because he cannot enter your body, and likewise the other guy. So as you do that more and more and more over a herd immunity of, let's say, 80, 85%, even 90, then the enemy in you dies.
All these in this week's episode of Open for Business.
He will never be you, na 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 na, and my heart will never be the same. He will never be you, na 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 na.
Hi, I'm Nikki Dumag, and please catch me on Letters and Music on air and online
This coming Saturday, May 8, 1 to 2 p.m. Only here on Net 25.
Welcome back. From food chicken satay to imitation beef rendang, a high-tech Singapore laboratory is replicating popular Asian dishes with plant-based meat alternatives to feed the region's growing appetite for sustainable food. Take a look.
Tofu and tempeh are already part of the cuisines of this region. So if you look at plant-based, people are already consuming plant-based. If you really look at the plant-based meat alternatives, and I think this is something which is, the trend is coming from Europe and the US, where you really mimic the burgers and the chicken nuggets of this world. This is something which is still very in the starting phase in this region, where we can combine our knowledge about protein, textures, and flavor creation, and taste all together. And I think that's really what's the key of having all these parts here together, is we can create the local taste, work with local chefs, with our local customers, the taste to what's needed here in Asia.
Singapore's government has released a catchy music video urging citizens to get vaccinated. The video features a popular 90s sitcom character sporting his signature afro, facial mole, and rubber boots, rapping about the benefits of vaccination in Singlish, a patois that mixes English with words from several local tongues. Watch this.
It's time to vaccinate. Faster, Lola. No time to waste. But you are easy, confirm safe. Aya, Rosie, come on, be brave. The vaccine is not anyhow wet, and against COVID, it will protect. Singapore, don't wait and see. Better get your shot. Steady, boom, baby. Faster, go and vaccinate. Don't delay your wait. But chronic illness still can take. I'm not sure, I'm quite afraid. Chronic illnesses, mild allergies, all these can take. There you see. If not sure, relax, don't panic. Ask your doctor at the clinic. It's safe for most, including elderly, cause the government got checked properly. Singapore, don't wait and see. Better get your shot. Steady, boom, baby. Faster, go and vaccinate. Don't delay your wait. But COVID numbers now so low. Why take now? Just take it slow. Low cases isn't no cases. Don't sabo and throw our faces. The vaccine don't just protect us, it lessens the spread. Now that's the plus. We don't catch it means we don't spread it like that. That can keep people safe. And it's Singapore. Don't wait and see. Then get your shot. Steady, boom, baby. Faster, go and vaccinate. Don't delay your wait, my friend. Singapore. Don't wait and see. Then get your shot. Steady, boom, baby. Faster, go and vaccinate. Don't delay your wait, my friend. V is for vaccine. V is for victory over COVID. Don't play. I got my shot. Get yours too, okay? Your father never teach you.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Ralph,
that's some
for
technical glitches earlier. Yeah. Anyway, it's really great to see you again. Thanks for having me today. And that's the latest news in the Asean region. Thank you for joining us today. This is Ralph Randolph Empire from your EBC Vietnam Bureau. we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Ralph, for keeping me company today. And we'll see you back next week. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.